I actually don't revel. I don't revel or secretly enjoy pissing off fan bases. I do enjoy writing accurate things about NBA executives or coaches or players that everyone talks about and no one will say. That I'm happy to do, and that sort of overlapped with my Doc Rivers coverage the last 10 years. Although I think the worms turn there. I think there's a general sense, or there's not universal belief that Doc is a genius anymore. And I'm certainly a person that people will come to now. Sources are very happy to sort of talk to me about Doc Rivers. So yeah, let's get into this Giannis report. Yesterday, story came out that I spent some time reporting that people around the NBA, and you know how this works, Brad. You talk to various folks. I talk to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of high-level people. I talk to a lot of people in decision-making positions I trust. And it was a universal level of belief that if, and it's an if, the Milwaukee Bucks struggle this year, and they were awful last night against Memphis, they're now 1-4, that they think Giannis not only will ask to be traded at some point, that it could very well happen, several sources think, before the trade deadline. So the reporting is a belief in the NBA that Giannis is going to be attainable in the next year, maybe even this season before the trade deadline. A belief that Doc Rivers is starting to expand his reach a little bit into the front office in Milwaukee, which is typical for sort of how Doc operates, and that could create some messiness. There are two teams, which we'll talk about later. We can get into the details, but there's I have heard that Giannis wants either the Nets or the Heat. And I actually, when these stories go well, usually after they come out, Brad, people will call me. I feel that a lot of phone calls that just came in yesterday from executive sources, some GMs saying, you got it right. And one guy said, how did you know about Brooklyn and Miami? That's right. So we'll kind of get into the possible trades that are out there. There's a lot to unpack here, but the main thing for me is if I'm Giannis and I'm about to turn 30 years old, and one executive yesterday said something to me that really caught me. He called me after the story came out and said, you should add next time you talk about this, that normal people have midlife crises at 40, he told me. It's well known that players have them at 30. You turn 30 and it's like, I'm going to get older. These skills are going to go away. You sort of look around, right? You're talking about Giannis turning 30 in December. The team looks like an absolute mess. Are you trusting, if you're Giannis, are you trusting Doc Rivers with your legacy for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years?
No, certainly not in this context either, because if any coach requires the right roster to get it done, all of the Doc pushback, I thought that was actually one of the most interesting parts of your report was the influence that he's starting to weave behind the scenes there. And it does make sense. But I think there's about 4 or 5 coaches in the league that move the needle. Now, I don't think that makes Doc Rivers or Chauncey Billups or insert coach X here a bad coach. I just think it makes them roster dependent, like 90% of coaches. So unless you're Spoelstra, I think to some degree Kerr, Popovich, there's maybe I'm a Kerr guy as much as I
got it.
But I just know Doc's not going to think that he was going to come in last year. Adrian Griffin was 30-13, and he was just going to completely change everything. Was ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous that the Lakers think JJ Redick is going to change everything. It just doesn't happen. There's not very many examples of it. So no, I would not be trusting that because you made a coach change and you have the same roster, an aging roster. Brook Lopez is going to go down. Chris Middleton, thinking he's going to come back off ankle surgery. Yep. He's already a diminished version of himself. We've seen him in individual decline. He's not going to come back and completely move the needle. They've lost 4 straight games by double digits. And I got to tell you, Bill, last night, coming off a report like you put out, when you start to see teams that have given up, and that becomes sort of a low-hanging fruit.
Abdicated any effort early on.
And it's easy to say that when things are going bad. Oh, they've given up. It's kind of a cliche thing to say. They're not playing for the coach, whatever. That team last night had no interest in playing, no interest in playing together, no interest in defending, no interest in moving the ball. They're not shooting. They're not sharing. They're very low in assists. Their defensive and offensive rating. Their defensive rating is hanging by a thread only when Brook Lopez is on the hit. It's still a bottom 10 unit. This is not a good team. The Damian Lillard
not a good team.
Go well because Damian Lillard's not what he used to be. We can get into a lot of the basketball reasons, but no. To answer your question in long, if I was Giannis and my main concern was winning more championships, Milwaukee would not look like a very good place to do that right now.
All right, let me give you two thoughts, and this is based on reporting. And look, for people that are watching live, and there's a bunch of you right now, and we appreciate you. You can always check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and you can watch us live every day at noon on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, give us a 5-star review. However you're consuming the show, let people know about it. Look, I'm not a Doc Rivers guy, and I've done a lot of reporting on Doc Rivers that goes back many, many years when he was with the Clippers. But I've also become a reporter that when people don't like Doc or want to be negative about Doc, they'll come to me. So I have to kind of filter it to make sure that it's accurate, not people trying to settle scores. One of the things that was pointed out to me in the reporting that led to this story, Brad, about Giannis maybe being willing to leave, and certainly that poured in yesterday from people around the NBA who just wanted to talk about my story, who called me, is this reminder that when things go badly, there's a strong belief out there that Doc Rivers starts to create a toxic environment. He'll throw guys under the bus. We saw that with whatever you think of Ben Simmons. Threw him under the bus after that playoff game where he passed up on the dunk. And there's a million examples. So I think that there's a world, and certainly NBA people would tell you, not everybody, but many, that if things go badly, and they went badly last night, Doc Rivers, even if he is a serviceable coach, is not great at creating an environment that turns around a bad culture. They would argue that he adds fuel to the fire. Not great if you're trying to convince someone like Giannis not to force his way out.